Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 21. Deuteronomy 5:21, it says, "You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not set your desire," which is a synonym for the same word for covet. You should not set your desire on your neighbor's house or land, his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. We've been in this series called The Good Life. We wrap it up this morning with the 10th and final commandment. And if you think back to when we first began this series, we mentioned that God did not give the 10 commandments as a means to find salvation. Remember that God gave the 10 commandments after He delivered the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. It was after that. In the same line of thinking, God has delivered us, those of us who are Christians, who have given ourselves to Jesus Christ and put Him at the center of our lives, we've been baptized into Christ. We have been already delivered from sin and death and hell. And so the 10 commandments and the rest of the law and all of the Bible is given not so that we can be saved. We've already been through that. We've already been saved through Jesus Christ. But so that we can live the good life. If you look at the 10 commandments in context of Exodus chapter 20, where they were first given, and then Deuteronomy chapter 5, where Moses goes over them again, in that context, you'll find that God says, I've given you these commandments, I've given you the whole book of the law, so that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and that you may be prosperous and successful, that you may live the good life. And so that's why we have the 10 commandments. God's desire for us is that we would follow these commandments, again, not to be saved, but that we can live in light of God and please Him with our lives. Remember, the first 4 commandments deal with our relationship with God. And if we follow these 10 commandments, then we live in harmony with God. The last 6 deal with our relationships with each other, and then we can live, if we follow them, we can live in harmony with each other. That's God's desire, to help us live the good life. Now, the first 9 commandments are pretty simple. They deal with our actions. We get to the 10th commandment, and it appears that we make a little transition from our actions to our, it's a matter of the heart, our inner thinking and what's coming out. It would be fair to say that lust and greed and selfishness are all rooted in this 10th commandment. You shall not covet. What does it mean? The Hebrew word for this word for covet means to desire, to wish for, to crave, to long after, or probably the best description I can think of is to pant after. Isn't that a good description? When you think of coveting, I think of a dog. Last night, my wife and I were sitting on the couch. We happened to eat our dinner on the couch last night. My dog is sitting there in front of us. He wants some food, and you know what he's doing? Like, give me something to eat now. He's coveting what we have. And bad parents we are of a dog, we didn't give him anything. So, but that's what we imagine. That coveting is this panting after, like I really want that thing. And so it kind of goes like this. The eyes see an object. The mind admires it. The will goes over and over and over and over again in your mind, and then the body moves in to possess that object. Now listen, it could be that even if you haven't taken that final step, you could still be in the process of coveting. You could be coveting even right now, because coveting is this itch to have what someone else has. It's also a dissatisfaction with what we have. And it's a jealousy, this deep inward jealousy toward those who have something maybe even better than we have, or something that they have and we don't. And so the chances are everyone in this room, we've dealt with coveting in our lives. As toddlers possibly, man, we wanted to have that toy in the nursery. As high school, and it was turning into teenagers, we secretly desire maybe the physical traits or the characteristics or even the items and possessions that our friends have. It's what happens when we want or pant after what others have. So it could be objects. You could covet after a house, a car, a motorcycle, furniture, a phone, or some other material possession. It could be even a deep desire for someone's spouse, a person's position in life, a person's influence. You wish you had that kind of influence, or even someone's. Some of you parents are thinking, man, I wish I could trade children with those over there. It'd be a lot easier in my life, right? We could even covet other people's children and wish to trade. So the list of possibilities of what we could covet is endless. It could go on into some very dark places. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But coveting, again, is the uncontrolled desire to acquire what other people possess. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't desire after anything, all right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't desire anything. It's okay to have ambitions. It's okay to set goals. In fact, the Bible teaches us to set goals and to make plans and things like that, of course, in light of what God may want us to do. But coveting has to do with this excessive craving for things that belong to other people. And it's often rooted, again, in greed and envy and jealousy. I think coveting also means that whenever we want something that belongs to someone else, we are, in a way, rejecting God's desire for our own lives. And it's like we're saying that, what God has given me, what He's provided me with, what God has blessed me with, it's not enough. Who are we to say to God, it's not enough, right? So, our panting after other people's stuff, it leads to some very harmful and serious effects. I'll give you a few of those here as we jump right in. Write these in your notes if you would, and your bulletins. There's an insert where you can fill in some blanks as we go along here. But here's the first one. Coveting leads to fatigue. Fatigue. As we go through these, maybe consider where you are in your life. Are you tired? Are you worn out? In our push to get more as Americans, we go beyond working to take care of our needs, pay our bills. Some people will go so far as to get a second and third job in order to keep up with the Joneses, in order to get more, in order to possess more, in order to have more. And so what ends up happening is, in the material rat race, it leads to fatigue. We get tired, we get worn out. Proverbs 23:4, it says, "Do not wear yourself out to get rich." And it says, have the wisdom to show restraint. God's word challenges us to be wise enough to know, man, I got to stop doing this. It's killing me. I'm tired. I'm worn out. And I've got to, so wisdom is going to say, enough is enough. I need to stop doing this. I'm too tired. So are you worn out? Are you tired? Are you feeling fatigued? Could be that you're coveting. Here's the next one. Secondly, coveting leads to debt. It leads to debt. We're in this race to get more. Many people are willing to go to extremes to get that stuff that they really deeply desire and pant after. We take out mortgages, we take out second mortgages, we get auto loans, we get personal loans, and when that's not enough, what do? Yep, we charge it, right? Cha-ching, we slide the card, yeah. And then, did you know that the average American family, the average American household carries a debt on their credit cards of $5,700 per month? These are the ones that are actually paying off each month what they've charged up and not being charged any interest. It's even higher for those who are not paying off their credit card debt each month, and they're paying the extra added interest. Do you know what their average amount is? It's almost $10,000 in each month that they owe on their credit cards. $9,300, over $9,300 is what the average American household owns on those who do not pay off their credit cards each month and allow the interest to build up. That's a lot of money. Why are we doing this? Because we want what other people have. We can't be doing this. Look at Proverbs 22. Do not be a man who strikes hands in pledge or puts up security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from under you. My prayer for our church members for a long time now has been that we would be a church that would not be in debt. that each of us could get out of the debt or the hole that we've climbed into, and that we could be debt-free so that we can do some great things for God's kingdom, so that we can follow this, what Solomon is writing right here, that we would not strike hands in pledge, we would not put up security for debt. That's where I'm praying for. But here's the thing. Sometimes the problem isn't that we don't make enough money. I think most of us in this room probably make enough money to make ends meet, to pay the bills, to get on with life. Sometimes I think we just want way too much. And a lot of things that we call needs are really greeds. And it's sad. Some people can't seem to get enough. And coveting can wreck your budget. It can drive you into debt. And so if you're here, maybe you're up to your eyeballs in debt, right? If you're there, it may be that coveting has gotten the best of you. I pray for you. Here's the third one. Coveting leads to worry. It leads to worry. The more stuff you got, the more you got to worry about, right? Ecclesiastes 5:12. Solomon says, "The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of a rich man permits him no sleep." The more you have, the more there is to worry about, right? I don't worry about my yacht up in Lake Erie or anywhere else. You know why? I don't have one. I don't worry about my motorcycle in the garage. You know why? Yeah, I don't have one. I don't have to worry about this, Darby. But the more you have, the more you have to worry about, right? At first, we worry about, how am I going to get this thing? I really got to have it. And once we get it, then what? We worry about how we're going to take care of it. I got to worry about how to insure it, how to protect it, how to save it, how to invest it, how to avoid taxes on it, how to keep from losing it. And so, we go through all these things. And if these things are keeping you up at night, coveting may be getting the best of you. And so we don't want to worry about stuff, right? Here's the fourth one. Coveting leads to conflict. Yikes. James chapter 4 and verse 1, it says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within?" Again, we want what somebody else has and we can't get it, and a quarrel starts. Financial tension. Financial tension is one of the top causes of divorce. When couples argue about, well, we don't have money for this, and I want to go buy this, but and you shouldn't, but you do, and it just causes tension. Couples fight about money and possessions, and it ultimately leads to divorce. And so when someone else has what you want, it often leads to conflict. The last one, coveting leads to dissatisfaction. It leads to dissatisfaction. Ecclesiastes 5:10 again, from the wisest and wealthiest man who ever lived, King Solomon, he says, "Whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income." How many of you think you make enough money? Are you satisfied with it? I don't see a whole lot of hands going up. I wish I made more money, right? Give me more. It could be possible that we have a coveting issue. And what ends up happening is that things in our lives that we go after and we go get, they may bring happiness for a little while, but you ever notice that happiness seems to wear off? Like we kind of get used to whatever we might have bought, or we kind of get used to it, and we're like, that was fine. The thrill was short-lived. It doesn't last. The excitement kind of wears off. It subsides, and so we're dissatisfied with life. And maybe you think, I wish I could be a lot further ahead where I am in my life right now than, I'm just not there. I'm dissatisfied. I thought it'd be a lot better by this time. And it could be that you have a coveting problem. So what's the answer to all of this? Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you fatigued? Are you in debt? Trying to figure out how I'm going to pay the next credit card bill or whatever? Are you worried about how things are going to work out? Are you fighting with your spouse over things? And are you dissatisfied? Are you just thinking, man, I wish I thought I'd be a lot further ahead in life than where I am now? Where are you? If these are where you are, it appears that maybe coveting has led us into some really deep, dark places, and I don't want to be there, and how do I get out of this, and how do I not covet? What do we do? Paul gives us the answer in Philippians 4:12. Here's what he says. I know what it is to be in need. I've been there. I know what it is to have plenty. I've been there too. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. So we need to go from coveting to what? Contentment. We need to learn the secret to contentment. You probably should underline that phrase, because contentment doesn't come naturally. It's not like when we get baptized, all of a sudden God fills us with all these gifts and contentment is one of them. We're just like, okay, Lord, it's all yours, and then that works out. No, Paul says, I have learned the secret to being content. It's a learning process. And it's not automatic. How do we learn to be content? What does that look like? I'll give you 4 ways this morning, and there are many different ways to do this, but these 4 I think are pretty prominent. Write these in your notes. How can I learn to be content? Here's the first one. I need to resist comparing myself to other people. Resist the urge to compare yourself with what other people have or even who they are. Comparing leads to coveting. Paul's writing in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, and he says, we do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. He says, when they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not what? They're foolish. It's foolish to compare yourself to others and what others have. So think about it. In your own life, maybe a friend of yours, a buddy of yours, or a relative of yours gets something that is really nice, a house, a car, furniture, I don't know, whatever, outdoor stuff. They get something really nice. What's your reaction? Is it, man, I got to have that too? Or I wish I could have that, but I can't afford it, and I got to find a way to get it? Are you angry? I've seen family members and friends get angry because their buddy or their family member went out and got something that they couldn't afford, and they're like, oh, I'm so mad, and I'm not even going to be happy. Or is your reaction, hey man, I'm glad for you, I'm happy for you? And if so, that's a real sign of Christian maturity. Maturity says I don't have to own everything in life to enjoy life. I can be happy for others who have what I don't have. I can be content with what I do have right now in the present moment. That's maturity. We've got to resist comparing ourselves to others. Look at 1 Timothy 6:9. Because here's what happens. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and into a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into what? Ruin and destruction. Yikes. Have you found yourself going after all this stuff, and all of a sudden you get there and you go, man, why did I spend my money on all this? I've got nothing to show for it. I've gone bankrupt. I can't afford it. I can't make ends meet. What am I going to do? Ruin and destruction, because we've chased the almighty dollar. We've chased what other people have. And I want to say this. Your net worth has nothing to do with your self-worth. Amen? Doesn't matter what you have. But when we begin to allow things and money and possessions to control us, if we're not careful, we'll find ourselves sacrificing those things that are valuable to us. We'll go down a road that we wish we'd never gone down. We'll start sacrificing our values and our morals and our integrity. We'll sacrifice money and time and possessions. We'll even sacrifice relationships if we're not careful to get more. Here's the second one. Another R word. We need to rejoice in what we have. We got to rejoice in what we do have. I was listening to the radio coming in this morning, Counting Every Blessing, new song coming out, or new song that came out here just maybe this year. I'm counting every blessing. I love that song. Is it what we really do, though? It's easy to sit back and moan and complain. Well, I don't have this, and I don't have that, and I wish I had what he has over there. And we kind of play this game of, just this wishing game, and it's not good, because what God wants us to do is appreciate what he has given us. And so we need to ask God to open our eyes to these blessings, to his blessings. We have so much to be thankful for. Ecclesiastes 5:19, again, Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, he says, "Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God." God expects us to accept what he's given us, to enjoy what he's given us, but also to be thankful for what he's given us, to not moan and complain about what we don't have. You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for God, right? Oh, man. Nothing. He's given us everything, and it's all a gift from him. But far too often, we get caught up in what I would call when and then thinking. You ever find yourself there? You know, when this happens, then I'll be happy. When I get there, then I'll be happy. When I get this one thing, then I'll be happy. And the thing about when and then thinking is that it never really works out that way, does it? You know, we may accomplish something on our when and then thinking mindset or list, and when we get that thing done, we're going, okay, I got it, now what? I was happy for a little while, but it wears off, unfortunately, doesn't it? For instance, man, when I get a girlfriend, man, I'll be happy. When we get engaged, oh yeah, I'll be happy. Oh, you know what? When we get married, then I'll be happy. Oh, wait a minute, when we buy a house together and live together, that'll be the ultimate, you know, when we, you know, oh no, when we have kids, oh yeah, that'll be it. Unfortunately, when I can get out of this marriage, when I get down the road and I can get rid of this woman, I'll be happy. And we just keep going down. What do? The circle comes back around. When I get a girlfriend, you know, on down the line. When and then thinking never really pans out. And so happiness, I want to say, it never stops. You've always got to go for the next thrill. Happiness really is not something that's going to last forever. It's really a choice. It's not about getting whatever you want. Happiness is learning to enjoy whatever you have right now in the moment. Choosing joy over just being happy or being thrilled for a moment. That's what it's about. Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy 6:17, God richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Are you enjoying right now what God has given you in this moment? Can you really say, yep, man, I really love what God's doing for me right now? That's what he wants. He wants us to enjoy what we have. And like a parent, what do we tell our kids? They say, I want this or I want that. My buddy has one. Why can't I? What do we tell them? Enjoy what you have right now. You know? Enjoy. That's what God's telling us. Enjoy what you have right now and don't worry about what other people have. Don't pant after that other stuff. It's important that you live that way. Number 3. This may be the most difficult one for us, especially if we love things, we love money, but to release what we have to help others, to give it away. 1 Timothy 6, Paul says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, not to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Isn't that great? He wants us to enjoy this stuff. Next, he says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. It's like he's talking to little kids. Be willing to share, right? Verse 19, in this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. If you give it away, you will be living the good life that God wants you to live. I've mentioned this before. Who are the rich in this present world? Everyone should be raising your hand. Everyone in this room, you should be raising your hand. We are the rich in this world. By the world's standards, listen to this. Even if you're on welfare here in this country, you are rich. You are wealthy. You may not feel rich. You may feel like, oh man, I don't really have a whole lot in my world, and it's just I just don't have enough money to do things. But listen, if you make, get this, $20,000 a year, you are in the top 3% of the world's economy. Who are the rich? Yeah, we are. Man, oh man, are we wealthy. So Paul's telling us, he's speaking right to us in this passage, you are rich, here's what you need to do. You can be wealthy, and at the same time, you don't have to be materialistic. How? He tells us, don't be proud of your wealth, don't trust in money, it's not going to last forever. It's so uncertain. He tells us to do good with our money and to willingly give generously. To willingly give generously. Why? Because giving is the cure for materialism. If you find yourself yearning and desiring for what other people have, maybe you need to give something away. Ooh, take that challenge. Giving is the cure for the disease of materialism, and the benefit of giving generously is that you're going to be storing up real treasures in heaven. Just as Paul said in that verse, every time you give, it's like you're sending it on ahead into some kind of savings account into heaven. Maybe you heard the story of the guy who died and went to heaven, and he's standing at the pearly gates, as they do, before Peter, and he's talking to Peter, and all of a sudden his buddy drives by in a Mercedes. And of course this guy's eyes light up. He's like, whoa, wow, how do I get me one of those, Coveting in heaven. I don't know. Anyway, Peter's like, well, here's the deal. If you were generous on earth, and how generous you were on earth, it determines on what you get to drive in heaven. Your buddy was really generous while he was on earth, so he gets to drive a Mercedes. And so the guy contemplates this for a second, and maybe he gulps a little, because then Peter says, you weren't that generous on earth. And the guy's like, okay, what do I get to drive? So Peter says, here it comes now. Moped. Oh, man, moped. So the guy is really dejected, and he kind of gets on his moped, and he kind of revs it up a little bit. And just that moment, he becomes elated, because here comes his boss on roller skates. But here, it raises a serious question. What are you sending ahead into heaven? How are you building up? How are you storing up treasures? Not on earth, because we know the things on earth aren't going to last. It's going to rust. It's going to rot. It's going to be destroyed someday. How do we store up treasures for ourselves in heaven? What is that? How are you doing that in your life right now? What are you sending on ahead? Jesus himself, he said, it is more blessed to give than to what? Are you giving it away? Generosity is a sign of real spiritual maturity. Listen to me on this. When you get more excited about what you give away than about what you get, that is a real sign of spiritual maturity. Do you get excited when you're able to just give it away more than what you get? Man, that's my prayer for our church too. Number 4. We've got to refocus our lives around eternal priorities. Refocus our lives around eternal priorities. I'm going to do a little sermon plug here, because next week we're going to start a new message series called Focused. And we're going to be talking about this very thing. How do I get my life centered and focused around Jesus Christ? So I want to invite you to come and be a part of that message series. Don't miss it. Invite your friends. Fill this place up, because it's going to be probably maybe the most important series we talk about this year. We'll see what happens. So a little plug. For now, 2 Corinthians 4:18. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is what? Yep. But what is unseen is what? Isn't that neat? Everything that you have, that you can see, that you can touch, that you can feel, everything that's tangible in this world, it's temporary. It is going to rot. It is going to rust. And someday God's going to come and burn it up. It's not going to last. But what will last? The Holy Spirit, our souls, Jesus Christ, whose word never fails, will never be wiped out. Jesus tells a story about a guy who was really successful. He tells about how this guy, he built these barns to store all of his grain in, and he gets to the end of that year and everything's fine. Well, the next year he has even a bigger harvest, and what's he do? He tears down his current barns, he builds bigger barns, and he stores his grain in those barns, and then Jesus says, this guy's a fool. He says, this very night, your life will be claimed. You're going to die, man, and then what's going to happen to your stuff? And it's unfortunate, because this guy never even considered sharing his blessings. Never considered sharing his wealth with those who might need it. And he kept it all to himself, and God calls him a fool, because he failed to realize that things in life are really amount to nothing. There's more to life than just things. So Jesus says, he wraps up this little sermonette, and he says in Luke chapter 12 and verse 15, he says, watch out. He says, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. You can pile it up all you want. It doesn't amount a thing. But unfortunately, in our culture, in our society, it says if you have a lot, you're worth a lot. If you have very little, you're worth very little. That's unfortunate, isn't it? But God says that's not true. He says, you know what? Because of the cross, you're worth a lot regardless of what you have, regardless of who you are. And I think sometimes as Christians, we do need to sit back, pause for a moment, and do kind of this checkup in our lives. And I would challenge you maybe this week to do that, to sit down and just talk with God and ask this one question, this tough question, and that is, what am I really living for? What does my life point to? And how you answer this question, it's pretty easy to tell what you're living for. Think about this. What do you think about the most? What keeps you up at night? What worries you? What do you talk about the most? Maybe you need to ask these questions of a best friend of yours, or your wife, or your husband. What do you spend the most time on? What do you spend the most money on? Your answers to these questions will tell you what your real priorities really are. What am I living for? True contentment will never come from possessions. No way. Contentment is found in a close personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It will last forever. The 10 Commandments, these 10 ways that God gives us to live the good life, as you build your life on these principles, on these values, I'm convinced your life will be truly blessed. You will live the good life. I want to close with this very neat poem from Chuck Swindoll. It kind of puts things in perspective. And man, it hit me really hard when I came across it last week. But it says this. Chuck Swindoll writes, "It was spring, but it was summer I wanted. The warm days and the great outdoors. It was summer, but it was fall I wanted. The colorful leaves and the cool, dry air. It was fall, but it was winter I wanted. The beautiful snow and the joy of the holiday season. It was winter, but it was spring that I wanted. The freedom and the respect." Then he says, "I was 20, but it was 30 I wanted, to be mature and sophisticated." Then he says, "I was middle-aged, but it was 20 I wanted, the youth and the free spirit. I was retired, but it was middle age I wanted, the presence of mind without limitation." And he wraps it up like this. He says, "My life was over, but I never got what I wanted." Are you wishing for better days ahead? Are you living in a moment where, man, I can't wait till the weekend comes. Now I can't wait till Monday, or I can't wait, and I'm looking forward to my vacation. Are you always, if you find yourself wishing your life away, it's likely you're struggling with coveting. If you find yourself simply enduring the present, getting through, while always looking ahead to future happiness and future success, if you're involved in when and then thinking, you might just have a coveting heart. So this morning I want to invite you to surrender that to God. Give it to Him today. Let God know, I don't want to live this way anymore. And give your whole life to Jesus Christ. After Paul talks about being content in all circumstances, right? Philippians 4:12. Do you know what comes next? What verse comes next? 13. Philippians 4:13. New King James Version says, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me..." We love that verse, don't we? Think about this. Oh, man, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So, man, I'm down on life and I just need some strength. What do? I rub the lamp. I go to God. Hey, give me some Jesus. I need to live on a little bit of Jesus today. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Jesus wants to be at the center of your life. There's only room for one throne in your heart, and that is Jesus Christ. It's only through Jesus that you can get strength. When your life is centered around Jesus Christ, He gives you strength. Not when you're in trouble, not when you're struggling, but all the time. And so this morning, I want to invite you to surrender yourself to that. You can just decide that right where you're sitting. Lord, this morning, I'm going to stop coveting. I'm going to give my life to Jesus Christ, and I'm going to build my life around him. That's my prayer for you. If you haven't given yourself to Jesus, if you haven't surrendered to Jesus, I invite you this morning to come and do that today. To say, I'm putting Jesus at the center of my life. I need him as my Savior. I want to be baptized. And I want to walk out of here a brand new person today. If that's you, come down and meet me in the front. So let's stand and sing. Meet me this morning.